So, the safety equipment all works, but if you don't use it, it doesn't work.
That's
Um,
just, but you were in the Dolomites, right?
I was in the Dolomites, but Austria, kind of borders Italy in the
Yeah.
area, in the section that I was in. So it's the same type of mountain, same type of climbing. And some tourist was trying to do Instagram and all this other stuff, and I guess prioritize that over safety. So,
Well, yeah, safety first. I've known of people that have done crazy things, stunts or whatever you want to call it, and um, many times, it didn't turn out the way they wanted it to. I don't do any high risk stuff anymore.
but again, going back to your teaching and seminars and instructions, you always remind people to do very little things that are easy to forget. You always remind people to put a mouthpiece in, to put gloves on, to wrap your hands, all the things that are fairly minimalistic, but could cause like a goofy injury that nobody needs.
Yeah, and people think, yeah, and you're right because especially as you age, you don't always heal like you want to, and these things can turn into a major catastrophe or surgery and everything. And if you have a job, it could affect your job. And yeah, a little bit better safe than sorry. And then if bad things do happen, well, at least you tried everything to prepare yourself for it.
Right. And we never really had any catastrophic injuries at the gym. So do you want to remind people that there is a seminar?
Yeah, this Saturday, this seminar, workshop, whatever, 1:30 to 3:30 at Bender's Martial Arts and Fitness in the Andersonville section of Chicago. If you go to my website um, and look under, up on top under upcoming seminars or upcoming workshops, whatever, you'll have the exact address. Or I think we posted here on the YouTube clip. Because I'm the type of guy that when I go to some place, I don't remember shit to begin with, but when you go so many times, you never even think of the address. You just know it. So, but yeah, we're going to be covering. We'll be there 1:30 to 3:30 this Saturday evening.
Right. And I wanted to encourage people to show up because it's basically whatever we decide we want to work on. We usually have fun, it's safe, and we never push beyond the point of people's ability to handle it. And, you will definitely be better than you were coming in because
Well,
Tony's got a world of knowledge to share.
somebody emailed me this week asking about what are you going to cover because he was going to come in from out of state now, Indiana. I'm like, honestly, I don't know. I don't go there with a prepared plan. Like you said, it's kind of like, what do you guys need to hear or see? It is actually like a group lesson, right? A private lesson. And that's good. And I like it that way because sometimes when you prepare something, like in the past, leg locks or whatever it is that you're going to be working on, then people, I hate to say this, but some people think, well, I already know all that. Well, nobody does, nobody knows everything. Right. So, but when it's like, well, I don't know what we're going to cover. And then it's like dealer's choice. Martin will say, hey, Tony, can you cover some boxing thing or whatever? And somebody else will say this, whatever. And it makes it interesting for me because, I never know what to expect either. So I hope we see you guys down there. Please come, $75. And anyway, Martin has some technical stuff today for us to cover on the podcast.
Yeah, I think Tony and I have talked about this before, maybe briefly, but in general, in a sporting aspect, your space is dictated by the rules of the game. And whether it's an octagon or a ring or, even a gym mat, there is some confines to the space. And, one of the keys is always controlling this space. And that means distance. Now, like in a street situation, your distance might be infinite or like zero. They talk about fighting in a phone booth, which is kind of an anachronism now because there are no phone booths left. But I heard people use that term even now, like young people. So I think it exists as just a term, maybe an impractical one. So I looked at some clips where people are showing how distance works, and I was going to start with a clip that we've seen on YouTube, which is somebody put together kind of like an instructional on how to use movement to avoid getting punched. And this is kind of a gimmicky thing, but they're trying to illustrate a point where they're being evasive. So here is a little bit of an example. And, this is a guy that's moving a lot. What do you think, Tony? What do you see? How does this translate into practical skills and maybe skills you see in an actual ring?
Yeah. Well, you're right. It's very gimmicky because while okay, he may not be getting hit by this guy, so he wins on that account. He's backpedaling. He's running away, in essence. And the idea of avoiding getting hit is to avoid getting hit where you're still in a position where you can counter, because this would be very impressive if his back was up against the wall or he was like one step away from the wall. Okay, that's where your skills really come into play. Basically, here he's just out of distance. He's just and the guy throwing punches really doesn't understand that. He's backpedaling, and well, again, that's going to work in this situation. So with turning around and running the 100-meter dash, but if you notice the guy, the guy backing up, he's really not using any angles. Okay, very little. He's just going backwards and backwards and backwards, and eventually you're going to run out of that, or the guy that's throwing punches is going to know, is actually going to know how to throw a proper punch. But none of these punches, if you notice, they're all coming up way short. So yeah, this would be a whole different world doing this against somebody who's skilled. Now, once again, to the defensive guy's credit, he's not going up against, he's not walking into a gym, boxing gym trying to pull this off. He's just going up against your average Joe. But remember this, everybody, in a street fight, these guys aren't serious. They're not really coming at them like gangbusters. That would change everything. And the key here is to slip or move or whatever term you want, avoid getting hit, but being in a position where you can counter. Okay. And once you start throwing offensive blows, this all changes the whole game. So, yeah, I mean,
Right. So
kudos to him.
you mentioned two things. One of them was that these guys point out, rightly so, that the guys throwing punches get really winded and quit even before the 45-second time interval is over.
Okay.
And that has a lot to do with them really chasing this person. Like you said, it's like 100-meter dash. It's tiring, and it doesn't really. They're not advancing their position. What do you think about in this case, the space is unlimited. But in the case of a ring, right, you see people close down the ring so that the person that's on defense can't really escape it. I think they call it walking down a person inside a ring.
Well, first and foremost, let's just get back to this guy a minute. Once he starts counterpunching, if he were to, he's now in range to get hit. Okay, unless he's 6'7" and the guy's 3 feet tall. He's going to be in range to get hit. And again, that changes everything. And that's how it is in fighting, in let's say boxing or MMA, but like boxing where you're limited to just striking. That's where angles and height up and down, altitude comes into play. And, you know, you have to work on those skills, and you have to accept the fact that you might get hit. So if you are to get hit, you want it to be, number one, a glancing blow. And number two, you don't want to be walking into it. You want to be moving away, so you're not like colliding, like, a head-on impact, so to speak. And this is where footwork, more than anything, comes into play. Sometimes it's not just even always moving your upper body. It is in certain instances, but sometimes it's just your footwork. So, like, this guy was using footwork that we just saw, was using footwork to keep backpedaling. Well, that's not, to me, an appropriate use of footwork. It should be circling or semi-circling, getting that angle so you can make some sort of an attack. But for his purpose of this video, I don't think that's what he was looking to do. He was just looking to, run away, in essence, keep backpedaling.
It's a demonstration, right?
Yeah, it's a demo. Yeah.
Right. So I guess your point is that if you backpedal, then you're not really in a position to be countering, and you're not gonna be running around for 2.5 hours in any kind of a realistic situation. Even like a 3-minute boxing round, it's not 3 minutes of running away.
Well, and it's also dangerous in an area that you don't realize. Now, he's in a parking lot. Okay, so that's pretty safe. But there could be other areas where if you try to pull this off, you're backpedaling, you can't see what's going on. You could step into something, you could trip, you could fall down, you could lose your balance. In a boxing ring, you know that everything is, level. Same with an octagon, wrestling mat, this parking lot. So give the guy kudos for this. This is not the way you want. You don't want to emulate this. This is not how you want to train. You want to train in a limited distance, very limited, no more than a few feet, a step or two from a wall or whatever it is, or ropes, So now you're really learning how to get those angles. That's my opinion.
Right. And again, to your point about skilled opponents, I think you and I before discussed this, but we watched a fight with George Foreman against Bobby Hitz, who's like a Chicago,
yeah, I know Bobby Hitz
from years ago, a professional boxer. And it's amazing, within one round, George Foreman walks him into a corner. Like, Bobby Hitz was clearly trying to be defensive and run away as much as possible. And he never made it out of one round because George Foreman just boxed him in.
Well, Bobby told me personally that, he was surprised how fast Foreman threw punches. You can't really get that impression from watching a video clip. Foreman's big, 22-inch arms or whatever, and it looks slow. And it is probably slow compared to, Sugar Ray Leonard. But yeah, when you're on the receiving end, yeah, he almost made it through round one, but he didn't quite do it. But yes, Foreman, there's not a lot of guys in the world that have as much experience as him from the Olympics on up. Yeah, he cut that ring off, and from what I remember, he got knocked out in the corner, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So like, he made that ring real small, and it's unrealistic to expect to have unlimited space. In fact, I've seen people fall over a curb trying to back away from a fight or get into a fight.
That's exactly right. And that's why the video clip you just shared with is kind of like, I watched a little bit of it before. I didn't even see this part of it because I only watched about 45 seconds. I had to stop because it was not my cup of tea. Yeah, it works, but yeah, that's not the way you want it. You don't want to train like that. You want to get, like I said, in a semicircle, smaller area. And once you can start slipping punches like a Willie Pep or somebody like that, then you don't really have anything to worry about.
Right. So switching a little bit towards a terrain where space is more limited, we've talked about this before too. It's some kind of a altercation, and this happens to be at Buffalo Wild Wings, and you can see that these guys are squared off, and one of them is closing distance. What do you think about that punch?
Well, yeah, it landed, and it was a solid punch. But let's back it up if you can, because let's just dissect this a second. Obviously, neither one of these kids are real skilled. The guy coming in was wide open. Let's hit the play, and okay, hands down, boom, and the other guy just threw a straight left hand. Um, you can't fault him. I mean, he didn't have a lot on it. He's not skilled because, he hit a wide open target and didn't follow up or anything. But this could have been completely avoided by keeping your hands up. The guy on the left here, if he would have kept his hands up and then didn't walk straight into the punch, if he would have again approached this guy with some sort of an angle, but look, it's a bum's rush, and boom, he's in trouble. And if I don't know if he's got a Batman shirt on or whatever, the guy with the yellow shirt, if he would have followed up on that, could have been over, but it doesn't look like he wanted to really get into the game too much.
Well, actually, the guy 1 second or 2 seconds later feels the effect of the punch and drops. I mean, he drops here from the first punch.
Okay.
Oh, good. It was a pretty solid punch. And, to your point, this is completely, these guys are squared off with their hands down, which is, I think what you mentioned is the typical kind of a opening stance, right? Like for people that are just going to go at it.
Yeah, and again, this guy here, he's backpedaling and stuff, so it doesn't look like he's really, to me, I don't know the guy, but it doesn't look like he's committed to wanting to like hurt this guy. Like now, let's go on. Play it a little more. Did he stomp on him or something?
No, once the guy goes down, so this is a well-timed punch, and then you can see the guy feels it right here.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah,
he completely drops. Now he's ready to go back at it. You'll see that he's got a friend.
Oh, somebody else jumps in. Okay. Well, but the Batman guy or whatever that shirt is.
I think it's Buffalo Wild Wings.
Okay. Well, he kind of made it a fair fight. He let he hit him and, that was the end of it. He didn't, pulverize him, at least up to this point of the clip. Yeah, you got to give him credit for capitalizing on it. But this guy, the guy that got knocked down, totally, once again, you come in with your chin up, your hands down, face wide open, you're asking for trouble. Just, you can't let your emotions get the best of you, man. You've got to cover up and come in with, don't come straight in. I mean, you can walk in a straight line, so to speak, but you've got to have those angles and shit, even if it's head movement, just always move so the guy can't key up on you, and tee off like what happened here. You keep your hands up, that's not going to happen. And another thing I should tell people, if you can, try to keep your hands open. Couple reasons why. When your fists are clenched really hard, you're tense. Your punches are going to slow down. You have to learn how to close your fist right slightly before impact. So keeping your hands open. And now that also allows you to, cover more area, defensively. That's really good, but learn to time it, on a heavy bag or whatever. Even if you don't have a heavy bag, put up a pad, a seat cushion or something up against the wall and just get used to closing your fist on impact and turning your hand.
Yeah, we covered this months ago when there was a bare knuckle fight with a professional boxer in it, like a fairly accomplished one. And I think I pointed it out that he was actually using a lot of open hands on defense versus keeping them closed, which you would think, he's a boxer, he's going to have his hands closed. He didn't. He was using them to cover more of his face and avoid getting cut, I suppose.
Yeah, well, boxers, I mean, you got the gloves, you can't tell, but, the gloves create a bigger surface to help you block punches and so on. Plus you're wrapped. So, this is all fine and dandy, except when you're in Chicago or Cleveland or something, and you're fighting in friggin' sub-zero weather outside, man. And you just get hit. You hit your own hand and it hurts, but you got to toughen up. But there's a lot to it. The bottom line is, don't be a sitting duck. Don't make the target easy to hit. You want a moving target. You want to be a moving target, and you don't want to give that target, you don't want to have it wide open. You want a very small window, if any. Make yourself hard to hit. I think if people would really work on that, number one, because look at boxers. It's rare that you'll see a quick one-punch knockout. It happens, but it's super rare. Boxers go for a while. Even guys who aren't super skilled, like we were talking about Bobby Hitz, almost made it through one round. If that was a street fight, You would think that the fight would end, somebody would break it up, or the police would be called, or whatever. So long before the 3 minutes. So you train. I always believe you're not training like to hopefully last against the champ for 12 rounds. You just need to last long enough to, if you're multi-talented, like you're a grappler, just last long enough so you can get in there with your grappling abilities, your grappling skills, or your kickboxing skills, or just to get out, run away.
Right. I just wanted to point out that in Chicago, or maybe all over the place, whenever there is a fight at Buffalo Wild Wings, it's also a shift change at the police station. So nobody ever shows up.
Well, Buffalo Wild Wings, BW3, that actually started in Cleveland, right? It's a Cleveland place. But I've only been there a couple of times. I used to go to other places for wings. We'll just put it that way.
Well, sorry, complete aside, but like they're also owned, or they own some gambling companies. Like they're heavily scrutinized. It's not just a place to get wings. They own some sort of a gambling angle on things.
Oh, I
So
don't follow it. I don't even think the Cleveland connection even exists anymore. Although there was a BW3 on Lincoln, I think, because when I was with Christy, her and I went there to watch either the Browns or the Indians, because it was a
yeah, I think
Cleveland
it was on
thing.
Clybourne, but yeah,
Okay, yeah. But no, that's again, the guy came in with wide open, throwing wild haymakers, totally untrained. And I get it that our anger sometimes gets the best of us, but people sometimes say things that they shouldn't say. But when you start to fight, you don't really want to fight somebody unless you really know how to fight, because you're asking for trouble, or you can get killed. Look what just happened at the NFL football game over the weekend. That fight broke out. That guy got hit. He's dead. Now, I just read something before we did the podcast, that an initial autopsy stated that he may have had some medical condition. They didn't elaborate, but so be it. Okay. Medical condition, known or unknown. He got into a fight. It didn't last all that long. And sadly, he's dead. Okay. This is why I always tell everybody, and you've heard me say it a million times since you've known me, and of course on my podcasts, you have to assume somebody's going to die in a street fight, either you or the opponent. You have to go under that assumption. It's life or death.
oh yeah, a pre-existing medical condition does not get you off the hook legally. Like they'll look at it from a legal perspective, like, would this guy have died if he never encountered you? And clearly the answer is no, if punches were involved. So
yeah, I mean, but even but without the legal aspect of it, you don't want to be killed. So you just don't want to get into a street fight, and if you do, you really have to know what you're doing.
so
Go ahead.
so that fight, as bizarre and raw it was, I kind of liked the timing on that punch, because as the guy took up the space, the other guy connected right away with a straight hand and really screwed the guy up. Like, taking space without proper protections is a dangerous proposition.
Yeah, well, you hit the word timing and space, and you have to be in the right position to time it right. Okay. And it just so happened that, the guy that got knocked down was charging, moved into position. The offensive guy, the guy that threw the punch, was really backpedaling in a way, but they were still in range, and he clobbered him and hit him solid enough that, knocked him down.
Yeah. So vaulting from that, this also is kind of a segue to what you see in a professional ring. I mean, these are two talented guys. That this fight happened a few months ago. However, what I liked about this is that the guy who here gets a knockdown was able to utilize the same technique over and over again in the same fight. And I think the commentators called it a check hook. So
it's a check hook. Yeah, exactly. And that was a glance.
Yeah, but the guy was he's I think a southpaw, right? So it kind of looks different than it would if it was a classic orthodox person.
Yeah, well, orthodox, you're gonna land with your left hand. But regardless, it's your lead hand that throws the hook. Now, okay, keep playing it. We'll get to the point where it happens. Okay, so boom. Now he times it. It's all generally it's an overhand. You go over the punch. And he did it going straight back. You can do it pivoting, which is even better. Because and sometimes you can move back. So he just okay. So boom, he clipped him there. Good. That's the check hook. Okay. And then but at times the offensive guy could have pivoted like a 45-degree angle. All right. There's several ways of doing this. There's stepping back, not hopping back so much, but you step back on your rear foot so you can generate some power, which he did. See, boom. You see how he stepped back on his rear foot? And he didn't hop, he stepped. So we can get that transfer of power. This is really important. Forget about the hand. Forget about the punch. It's the footwork here that does it. Now watch. Boom, and not there. It's coming up. Now watch. Let's wait for it. Boom, he's planted, and he was able to shift, and that's why there was some power behind that hook. Okay, so more than the punch, it was that footwork. It was that step back. But again, as I mentioned, you can also do this pivoting. This is not an easy thing to do because it's timing specifically, and you have to be in position to time it. So, like that very first clip you showed us today about the backpedaling guy, he never would have been able to pull this off most of the time, okay? Because he might have gone too far back. But this gentleman, this fighter here, didn't go that far that he was out of range to counter. This was beautiful. This was absolutely beautiful.
Right. So from the perspective of the guy pressing the action, the guy that gets dropped, what are some of the things that he needs to really be more aware of in order to avoid doing this? I mean, if I scroll this back a little bit,
Yeah, let's
right,
do that.
it really looks to me like he's again, we've covered this last week, but he's kind of reaching with his punch. Here he got lucky because he managed to pull back, but he doesn't get lucky twice. The second time when he lunges again, he gets clipped.
Right. It was just terrible. I'm going to say it terrible because what he did was what the BW, Wild Wings guy did. We'll play it again. But before we rewind it, let me explain. You're right. He was so far out of range. He threw that left hand pawing, probably not even trying to land it. But then he brings it back down by his hip and he walks in leading with his face. Please play that again.
Right
Okay,
here.
this is the
This is the
first
one
one.
he gets away with.
Yeah.
It's the
Right. Now
same mistake.
yeah. Now he's way far out. That's nothing. And boom, his hand's way low. Okay. You can never, ever do that. And this is good that you see this because even professional fighters make these mistakes. And the guy with the white trunks, I guess that's Martin, he capitalized on it. Okay. And I think it would be interesting to ask him, but that first bullshit punch, Martin probably realized, okay, this guy isn't with it right now. He's throwing these stupid punches from way out far away. If he does it again, I'm going to clobber him. And that's exactly what happened. And he did that. They're going to call it a check hook probably, but it could also just be, an overhand right in this instance, but an overhand hook. So, but yeah, call it a check hook. It was well executed.
Yeah, so from what I remember, the commentators did call it a check hook, but they also mentioned the fact that this guy's reversed because
Yeah,
the stance is
right.
uh,
So
this is also like an example of this guy Lopez being the heavy favorite. I think he was trying to press the action and get this guy out of here. And what I liked about this fight, this Sandor Martin guy was very disciplined, and he played this kind of game all night long. He lost the decision, but that could be political. But he was just composed enough to produce this kind of counter for a lot of these overreaching and overly eager attempts to press action.
Yeah, and pressing action is a positive, but it's not a positive when you're leading with your face. Okay, you just can't do that. And if you're not in condition, you don't want to lead with your liver, your midsection either. If you're not in condition, because they'll do body shots, and that could crumble you too. So it is the old axiom in boxing: protect yourself at all times. And Lopez here just did not protect himself. You can't, nobody, not you, not me, not anybody, unless you're George Chuvalo, who never got knocked down. You don't want to expose your face in front of a guy. And he was leaning in, which makes it even more dangerous. You
I
can't
think,
do it. Wild punch. It was a wild punch.
yeah, right. And I think the sport kind of cultivates this attitude as well because they have to play to the judges, they have to play to the referee, they have to look like they're pressing the action at a cost of perhaps an unrealistic risk. Like this could have ended the fight really if he wasn't tougher and stronger than this punch happened to be.
Yeah, and it was the second round, so conditioning didn't play a factor here. It was just bad fundamentals there of that's why you throw and come back, throw and come back, throw and come back, straight line, come back. But when you start doing these looping punches, or you saw even in the beginning, he had his left hand down. He was safe because he was out of range. I don't know the guy, so I don't know if that's how he likes to fight, but it is a nasty habit. You heard me bitch about this so many times. I don't like guys that do that unless you're baiting him, setting him up to, like you can lower your left hand. If let's say you're an orthodox, lower your left hand to get that guy to throw that right hand, and then you check hook him. You come with a counter hook, but you're doing that intentionally as part of your strategy. But there's a lot of boxers, fighters, MMA, whatever, they like to keep their hands down. It's just a terrible habit. I want you to keep your hands up. I always talk about that.
Right. Yeah. One other thing that you often talk about, or you started to talk about, is that when you're throwing punches, right, they can't be, and I don't have a clip to illustrate this. Maybe for next time I'll find something. But you mentioned that you can't just rely on ones and twos to be able to force a mistake out of your opponent. Like you mentioned that, yeah, in order to really get committed and get results, you might have to throw it like a 4-punch combo.
Yeah, but as long as you're not, number one, standing in front of the guy, okay, because 4 punches takes a little bit of time and you can get countered. And number two, try to mix it up. So like, don't throw like 1, 2, 3, 4 to his nose, because his hands are probably still there to block it. You have to figure out where the opening is. Okay. So you may throw one and now he blocked, but now when he blocks or parries or whatever, it may create another opening. So you boom, 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 change it up a little bit and move. Don't just necessarily stand in front of him. Get that head moving, get that angle. So you're always, looking like a radar, you're like a laser beam. You're trying to find that opening where he's not going to be able to, defend it. So, that's just my take on it. It's not that hard. It's just, you got to work at it. You got to work at it in the gym. Got to work at it slowly. And then all of a sudden it becomes a habit. Look at it like a shelf. You're going to get something off of this shelf, top shelf, middle shelf, bottom shelf, middle shelf, bottom shelf, top shelf. You're going to change the way you grab things. Well, that's how you should punch, change it. Boom, boom, boom. It's not that hard to do.
Right. But you did a interesting drill last time, and I'll try to explain it because I don't think we have it on video. But you said that there is I think you said 2 seconds or some amount of time that you can stand in front and then you got to get out. And then, when we tried it, it's amazing how much slower we are than that amount of time, right? Like you basically bum, bum, bum and get out. And that amount of time has to be some number, which is, probably derived from what human reactions can do. And then it's eye-opening at how slow we are or how much slower we are than we think we are.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's all, I mean, listen, there's times when, you can stay in front of the guy because you got him on the ropes or whatever, not literally even, but, he's on Queer Street. But generally, these are bad habits because, especially when it's an all-in fight where a guy can tackle you or something, shoot in on you. So I've known guys who talk about 9, 10 punch combinations, and that's not smart. You can't stand in front of a guy that long. Make it brief. Again, unless you've clobbered them and now you follow up. But once again, even when you follow up, don't stand in front of them. You still have, I mean, you're in front of them to a degree, but you know what I mean. Don't be a target. Get that angle where your opponent's in front of you, but you're not in front of your opponent. He can't counter you solidly. That's what it's all about. And that's why I don't like this in and out movement, this in and out footwork movement. It's a bad habit because it's a natural instinct. Okay. But yet it's not good. And I always bring up a bullfighter. Watch these bullfighters. They don't always go straight back. Okay. Because that bull will get them. So they pivot, they get their angles and, all of that shit. You've got to start fighting like that. You really do. Just don't get out of that habit of going straight back all the time. And a coach, maybe if coaches are watching or listening, do that as a drill. Don't let your student backpedal more than like one step, or 2 steps, or maybe start off with 3 steps. And when they get comfortable moving off of 3, then make it moving off of 2, then make it moving off of 1, and then make it just pivoting where they're not even taking a step. They're just standing there and pivoting and trying to get out, pivoting and ducking under and, and weaving and shit.
Right. And this goes also back for chasing. I mean, for the opposite direction, like we saw in the earlier clip, the guys that were chasing that target at the very far end of the range were really ineffective and getting tired very quickly because of how much energy they were wasting on just trying to walk down a person that was just exponentially getting farther and farther away from them.
Yeah, throwing punches takes energy. The guy that was defensive wasn't throwing anything. So, it's
especially when you miss, right? I mean, there's like nothing there to stop it.
There's nothing there to stop it. But again, I get what the guy was trying to do. Throw punches, hit me in the face. He'll if he does it with the wrong guy, he's going to regret it. Believe me, this is, I don't know why he's doing it. I don't know if these are setups. But it's really not worth the risk. Because especially when you're doing it on pavement, because if you do get hit, like this kid at the BW3's got hit, if this guy would get clobbered like that, hit hard and fall and hit his head on concrete, he may never live to make another YouTube video. So, take that for what it's worth. It's risky.
Right. Yeah. Well, we've seen that. There's been cases in Chicago. I think Daly's cousin or somebody hit somebody. Yeah. Right. The guy fell on cement and now he's dead. So.
Yeah. No. It's. I give him credit for having some skill to do that. But let's not. And again, that works in that scenario where you have unlimited range. But when that normally you don't normally have that. But for let's say more MMA style guys, really work on your footwork, keep your hands up, keep your chin down, so you can get in there if you have to and clinch. And realize that you may be going up. It's just hard because when you go up against a guy who's really skilled with striking, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be a boxer. It could be a kickboxer, a Thai boxer, or just a good karate man, like different styles like Kyoko Shinkai or something. You don't want to take it for granted that you're just going to walk through his punches. Okay, in an MMA match, everybody knows that there's a good chance that we're going to grapple here, right? But when it comes to a street fight, people may not think that way. Okay, so you don't know what's in store. So keep your hands up. Be very defensive as you're looking for your chance to do your offensive move. Don't get knocked out like that kid at Buffalo Wild Wings. Don't come in there hastily.
The cops aren't coming now; they're on shift change. So
yeah, the cops aren't coming in. And then you know what? It's you don't want the ambulance to come either, especially. Uh, this is good to discuss this and to have these video clips, because even when things are done right, there's always room for improvement. Let me hark back to jazz. I've listened to many world-class jazz musicians that have played improvised stuff that is just phenomenal. And I've talked to some of these guys, and they're like, yeah, I could have, I should have done this, or I could have done that. I could have done better. I could have done something different that would have even been more creative. Listen to this. And I'm like, wow, that's even better than what you did do. So there's always right ways for improvement. Okay. So when there's a difference between being critiquing or critical and then being like, just straight out hater. What the first clip did, the parking lot guy worked well, for that scenario. And with the boxers, it's just Lopez made a mistake, man. He led with his face, but you got to give Martin credit for capitalizing on it. That check hook is difficult because you have to have timing. And as you get older, like our age or my age, especially, your timing goes, your reflexes go. You have to have that reflex to be able to pull that off. And you have to be in the position to do it. But I wish people would watch that clip over and over, how Martin shifted back and he was planted. He had that power to generate that hook, even though it was a glance, it wasn't flush per se.
Right.
It had power. It knocked him down.
Right. It was also at a critical spot. They always say that these like blows to the temple are very disorienting. You can get a knockdown from, something that's not fully landed, but in that area tends to be disorienting and
yeah.
affect
Well, in
the
a street,
equilibrium.
yes. Now, in a street scenario, you do have to be cautious about hitting the skull because you don't want to break your hand. Normally your first train of thought is soft tissue, going for the throat, going for the face. I'm not sure, we don't know where he was aiming. I don't recall now, but I think Lopez kind of went, dropped down a little bit. I thought maybe he was initially going for the button, hitting on the jawline, and not Martin, but Lopez may have bobbed down. I don't remember, but either way, it's a great punch to learn. But first of all, before you even do check hooks, you got to learn to hook.
Right. And that ain't easy.
Yeah, right. No, that's a hard punch. It's a difficult punch to learn. It looks easy. And I see a lot of people throw hooks that are arm punches. And arm punches will work against, a pansy ass. But somebody who doesn't have a glass jaw is going to walk right through any arm punch. So you have to stop with your arm punches, start sitting down on your punches in a way, and that doesn't mean that you give up motion per se. But you do have to get some power generated, and heavy bag will help you. Just learn the difference between punching and pushing too. You don't want to push. That's the negative about a heavy bag. Sometimes guys will see this bag swinging like a pendulum. They think they're hitting hard. You're not. You're pushing. I mean, not always, but you got to look for that. Don't push.
Right. Okay, Tony. Anything else, or should we wrap it up? Short and sweet, and
yeah, we'll make them short. Yeah, well, we're filming this late, and for me, this is like way past my bedtime. I know you're just getting ready to go to the Polish discotheque.
Well, I don't want to, I don't want you to fall asleep.
No. But everybody, if you can, make it Saturday. If not, we normally try to hold it the third Saturday of the month. Next month, I'll talk to you about this, Martin. Aaron wants to come next month, either the third or the fourth Saturday. It's up to you and Joe. So you guys can get you and Joe. I already told Joe, so you and Joe work it out. We'll get back to Aaron. But everybody, I appreciate you watching and or listening. And until that time, we'll see you once again.
Right. Thanks for the ideas, Tony.